Welcome to Queerly Speaking. I'm your host, Nat Jones, and together my wife and I will navigate the complex intersections of faith, identity, love, and resilience. In each episode, we'll share stories of heartbreak, healing, and hope from individuals who were told they didn't belong in the very spaces that shaped us. Welcome back. I am incredibly excited this week because we have our first guest. And not only that, but it is someone that I've treasured for many, many, many years. I have to say, and Emily, for you, this goes without saying. You already know this. I've told you many times, but for everyone else, you being in my life as a therapist over the last decade has saved my life in more ways than I can count. And what you would say to me is that you helped me save my own life. So I get that, but I just want you to know, and everyone listening to know how much, that our time together has really impacted me. You also were the officiant for our wedding. A little
Which
over.
is so special.
Yeah, so special.
My proudest title.
Yes. And you just really played so many roles that have meant so much. So I appreciate that. And I'm really, really excited for everyone else to have the chance to listen to you and to learn from you and to hear your wisdom and really just your take on the world in general. The amount of depth that you're able to offer is unmatched. So I'm really excited to have this conversation today. So I wanted to talk a little bit about, this is a hard subject for a lot of people, but I wanted to talk about forgiveness. We've had so much. I'm going to rewind and I'm going to let you talk about yourself before I get into forgiveness.
Oh, wow. Maybe there's a message there for me in that rewind, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
first,
tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi,
Yes,
thanks.
hi.
What a kind intro. And it's been I am so lucky to have this job, to do this work. I mean, just imagine, right? The years that we have traveled together. I often tell folks that I work with, we will be travelers together, whether that's for a day, a month, 3 years, forever. It's a gift. We both are going to be on the journey, and man, that is certainly true. I feel like I have learned so much from you as well. And I'm honored to have this conversation with you. I have been in this field, in the mental health coaching field, for the last 14 years, and all kinds of different environments. I've worked in the business sector. I've worked in education. I've worked in treatment, both addiction, trauma treatment, and private practice. I've worked in the church. Am I forgetting any? No, that's it.
So pretty much everywhere.
On the side of a hill with horses and pigs even. So, I would say with that, I am no expert. I am a fellow traveler, that I've walked this road. Personally, I think I can identify with parts of your story. And I understand what it's like to be wounded and need support. And the truth really is that, what a gift to have people in this world that we can connect to, that can offer support. Whether that's professional skilled therapist, or a loving partner, or a caregiver, or a furry fuzzy friend, or
both of which are right beside me.
or the earth. If, you can't find any of those, just getting your feet on the ground
Yeah.
will help you get connected to yourself and to that which is really holding us all so kindly and gently. But yeah, I love the work. I am in private practice now. I am a licensed counselor, emotions relationship coach, and work primarily in private practice. I work with individuals, couples, and families, and I love what I do.
Well, it's definitely impacted me for sure. So thank you for that. I'm going to pause quickly and I'm going to put Rue in a bedroom upstairs because he is not being quiet. So I'll be right back. Come on, Rue. Come on.
Tami, is there anything I feel like I should have added to that?
No, I think that was great.
Is Rue
I loved it. He's like, I don't know if you could see me like twitching. I'm trying to like throw him treats, but I'm like, we're going to go through the whole bag.
No, I couldn't see you at all.
Not working. No, I think that was good. I'm excited about you. Oh my gosh, Rue. About the conversation.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that you're enjoying my questions because, someone said that the other day. They're like, oh my God, I'm always thinking what you're asking. And I'm like, I just have never heard of any of these things in my life.
Yes. Which is most people.
Right.
I'm hearing her share and I'm like, and Tami, I mean, Nat shares, I have to tell her, she's so matter of fact. Like, she's like, the prophetess came and told me.
And I'm like, who?
You let some woman in the house tell your parents that you're like, what? Oh my gosh.
Exactly.
The absurdity. That's what I mean. Your questions in it. There's so many things. Well, I guess I can say this and you can keep it, but honestly, sorry, let me just wipe my teariness from your sweet intro. But, what I will say is that your presence, Tami, I don't know the whole story. Maybe this is for another pod, but the reason why you decided to step in, obviously you're together now, but your presence as Nat steps into her story, and especially because of how traumatic and painful it is, in so many ways is helping her integrate and heal. I'll say this probably 100 times even in this conversation, but the difference between somebody being able to alchemize and heal and grow from a wound is the presence of connection. And so just witnessing you like next to her, listening to her, your questions, there is so much there's so much happening non-verbally. The attunement, the presence that you bring, that is literally like reorganizing and reordering her brain. Which it's such a incredible thing to witness. And, I think I was like, wonder if, I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, I wonder if, I'm sure you're aware, but just the power of you coming into this process. I mean, you could have done it by yourself. You could have been like, Tami's great, she's working or she's at the gym, but your willingness to join her. And I think even, oh man, it feels significant because, and not again, keep this heart flush. So much of your wounding is around rejection and abandonment by people that were to be your family, right? And so to have just to witness Tami, just her presence and her question. And I mean, of course, Tami's funny. So that brings like it's a titrating, which is also helpful. because sometimes now with what you're sharing, I'm like, Jesus Christ. Like, I mean, the sadness and pain is so real, and there's been such sweet moments, but to see Tami, sort of creating a container, holding the space. We use that word a lot. As you share and as you sort of float back to some of these moments, is profound. So just giving you your flowers, Tami. That's what I'm doing. And
Thank
as a
you so
listener, grateful for your questions, because Nat was telling Tami, there's things that you and I, because we have a familiarity in one of these contexts you were in, but for most of the world, Tami was like, wait, a prophetess came and your parents were just like listening to her? Like, and I was
Who
like,
is that?
and you're like trying to explain, like, yeah, like she carries a word. And
from listening to the podcast, several people have reached out and wanted to kind of share their story with us as well. And they've been a variety of stories, but, one from one of our friends being pretty much abandoned, by his family. Others who've been abandoned by their church. The stories are honestly endless. And one of the common things that are said to me is, I don't understand how you can have so much grace and so much peace when you're talking about whether it's my family or people that I have really worked really diligently to forgive. And when I was thinking about what I wanted to talk about with you, I thought, let's talk about forgiveness, because there's so many variations of, I think, people's thoughts around forgiveness, that's like, forgive, but don't forget. And all of these different things, like if I'm the one forgiving someone else, it's really more for me than it is for the other person. There's all these like ideas floating around, but I wanted to talk with you. What would you say to someone when we're getting these questions? Like, how do you forgive? How do you take the worst thing that's ever happened to you in your life, done by another human, and look that in the face and forgive? And what does that look like? I know, loaded question. I know. Yeah.
I'm like, honestly, I just want to be like, what's the thing in Uno where you like can return, like the return card?
Reverse.
Reverse. Like, I mean, the truth is, you, in a lot of ways, I think you have answered this probably already so beautifully. Just as you have stepped in and shared a good part of your story. And so a lot of maybe what I might share or just throw out there is going to echo things you've already said, but maybe would be pieces of the journey that I would want to highlight.
Yeah.
And then maybe we can poke at like, myths or like, what is forgiveness? What isn't?
Right.
And I like that. So I want to start, I just did, by using the word journey. I think it is that. It is a process that's important, because for a lot of us, when we're asking that question, it's evidence that we're in it. You're in the journey. You're asking that question like, how can you have, well, you're likely on the journey. Like you're in it. You're aware. You might be aware of a hurt or a wrongdoing or a rip or a rupture that's really affecting you. And so good news, you're already really on the way.
That's actually, it's fascinating. That perspective is very fascinating, because maybe not for everyone, but if you, at least the way I learned about forgiveness was like, you forgive, so it's a choice that you make. And then after that, there was no talk about like what happened, what are the feelings after that? If you still feel upset about it, does that mean you didn't forgive? Or And I just think that the way that you share that is such like a beautiful depiction of true forgiveness. It's
I
not
agree.
perfection. It's a journey.
Yeah. And I think one where there's way less value on the destination, and it's way much like most of our journeys, right? We end up realizing the treasure is in the messy middle.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, we know it's a journey because um because we feel loss, right? We feel anger, right? We feel brokenhearted. We feel disappointment. We feel, um, and at the same time, compassion, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I'm going to point this back to you, but the way that you are able to reflect now on your family and um, yeah, your siblings, your parents, even these different religious spaces that you've been a part of. And I think in some ways that might be what can be so shocking is just the depth of compassion. I mean, you can hear it. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I know how deep your pain, the experience of your pain has been. And I also know how much you adore and love your family,
Mm-hmm.
even now,
Yeah.
and how grateful you are. And talk about having to hold sometimes two opposing realities at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's evidence of some kind of forgiveness, and I often think about the journey of forgiveness is a lot like a loosening or an opening up or a letting go. And I think that's helpful because if you think about, right, like think about when you go to lose something, or I think about like I'm putting a heavy weight down,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like if I drop the weight, I'm going to injure myself and maybe like my lower extremities. There's like a practice of, or if I'm really contracted and I'm really stretching my muscles, right? Like
Right.
my body, it's funny, I'm using all these somatic references, but our body's a good map for even
Yeah.
this idea. There is a process to, I mean, it feels like something to open up our hands, to set something down, to let something go. And so if anything, I would want to normalize that it is a process, and there is a messy middle that's often
Mm-hmm.
filled with feelings and experiences and confusion. And it doesn't mean that um forgiveness isn't happening.
Mm.
Messy middle. I like that phrase.
Yeah. The journey of forgiveness, the
Yes.
messy middle.
It's
How
meant
does someone start?
it's meant for, yeah, so let me jump into that. It's really meant for the wounded.
Mm.
It's meant for the wounded, and I think it's one of the most courageous acts of self-care that we can engage.
Mm. I love that.
Because what it's doing is it's releasing me
Mm.
from whatever it's releasing me from whatever cords or heaviness or um whatever I'm holding on to in relationship to the wound, the rip, the rupture. It's really normal to experience a whole slew of emotions when somebody's violated you, right? Or harmed you, or um, all of the emotional experiences are valid and certainly make sense.
Yeah.
And what we know is if we, oftentimes our emotions are there to alert us or to bring a message to us. And, if I continue to run with my anger or my bitterness or my shame or my rage, those emotions will really start to have an effect on me, the holder of them, right? And
Right.
so really it's for me ultimately to to continue to move in my own journey, in my own life, into more healing. And I think that being said, it's I think it begs the question, like, you and I heard this a good bit. I think just coming from the context we heard, Tammy, I'd be curious what you've heard, but I think oftentimes, we can get the message like, I just heard this the other day, like, you need to forgive, you need to forgive, you need to forgive. And I think, yeah, that's tricky. When I say that, what comes up for you when I say that?
I love that. I just was going to say, I love the phrase that you used. You kind of opened it with saying that it's the biggest form of self-care that you can do. I think that probably a lot of people need to hear that. As soon as we even got together, with your story, I'm like, why are you being nice? Like, I immediately, and I'm sure it's like protection, right? Level of protection I feel over you, but I'm immediately like, fuck those people, for lack of a better word. Like, I'm like, I'm pissed, right? I'm like, this is ridiculous and whatever. Everyone knows that. But it took me a while to just learn, like, okay, I think one level is that really just is your heart. You're such a compassionate person and all of that. But knowing, like, the more and kind of hearing what things that you share with me about when you talk to Emily or things, like, it really is for you. You're really doing that journey for yourself, going on the journey for yourself. And I think even from my own experiences, I will hold a grudge. I'm not proud of that, but I just will. And I think a lot of it comes from what you said again before is, when you're doing it, and you kind of touch on this, honey, like, it's really something that you're doing for yourself, not for them. I feel like it's easy to go, especially when you're the wounded, like you said, to go to, you don't deserve my forgiveness. Why should I have to go through the exercise and the mental trial of reliving these things or going through them or working through them so you can feel better about yourself? Like, I'm not, to this day, I have thoughts like that. Like, I'm not giving that to you. What have you done to deserve that? But I think it really hit home what you said is, by doing that, I'm really just allowing myself, and you would be, or we are, or whatever, to carry the additional burden of anger and hurt. I've never really thought about it like that while it's another painful journey to go on, it's really, it doesn't matter if my forgiveness or your forgiveness allows the other people to put down their burden. It allows us to put ours down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
so
it's so true. It's so true. And I think too, like, I think a lot of people probably feel like that.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of people, I would imagine, feel like they haven't shown, like, whoever this other person is who caused the hurt, they haven't shown any change, and they haven't said they're sorry. They haven't done XYZ. And to kind of circle back around to your question, Em, what do I feel when someone says, just forgive, just forgive? Well, I think there's kind of these two extremes, right? Like, from your perspective, from Tammy's perspective, it's why should I go through that effort to do that when you've not shown any, like, you've not done anything. Like, you've not said, I'm sorry. You've not done all these things, right? That we would be looking for to repair. And then when I hear that on that end is just forgive, just forgive. It's like, I think one of the things that I have been able to accept in my own life is that it's going to take time. And sometimes, like, time is your best friend. Time allows space to heal. Time allows space to process. So growing up, when I would hear things like you said, just forgive, just do it, blah, blah, and it's just like, it would set off a panic inside of me because I wasn't ready to do that. I wasn't ready. And also in my mind, it was like an on-off switch. That's what forgiveness really is, right? Lights are off, turning them on, boom, forgive. And then like we all move on and I'm like, I'm sorry, that process doesn't work for me. And I don't think it works for me. I actually don't think it works for anybody.
Yeah.
So yeah, or just like get over it or let it go. It's like, those are also like phrases that I think I grew up with. I still kind of trigger a little bit to this day when someone's like, get over it.
Oh yeah. That sends me clear over the edge.
Yeah. I'm just like, I'll let you know when I'm going to get over it.
Well, you nailed it. It's minimizing, right? It's minimizing. Yeah. It's like, no, it's almost like, if I have a knife in my arm, right? And and ouch, there's a knife in my arm, and I walk into a room with, people that I'm in relationship with, let's just say, and they're like, hey, what's up? What do you want for dinner? Like, and I'm like, it can feel dismissive. It can feel minimizing, like, oh, moving on. Right. Like,
right.
This is why I love, that we're using sort of the concept of a journey, right? Like, it allows there to be room for days when we're angry or,
right.
Moments when we're brokenhearted and, longer moments of rage. I'm thinking just about my own story, but it allows there to be room to actually, create some sort of a healthier process or pattern around integrating really like the emotional expressions of the wound. Right. I think too, I was thinking about this as you were speaking too. There's sort of like these two relationships that I sort of see when we're thinking about forgiveness. And we're talking about right now is first the relationship with self, right? That's, when I say it's an act of self-care, it really is. I don't want there to be any confusion because, and I think most of us know this, but I'll just say it. Forgiveness does not assume repair. It does not assume accountability. It does not, it does not mean that somebody isn't responsible or all of a sudden now gets access relationally. Right? I think that's sort of the whole other piece of the conversation. We're sort of, again, we've sort of been swimming around this relationship with self, but I think the other part of it, and this is why I think we like to rush, like, okay, get it right in relationships, it's like, get over it. Like, I want things to be fine. I want to, us to have fun and play and be happy. I hear that so much. Like, I just want to get back to normal. I just want to be happy again. Well, again, it's we're talking about a relationship. Now the conversation that we're having, really, that I think is a part of forgiveness is the conversation around repair. Mm-hmm. I think repair is, we could spend hours and hours talking about, probably other pods for that. But I just wanted to be clear that forgiveness does not assume that somebody that has wounded you gets the same kind of access to you that they had.
It sounds like this is kind of where you were going to go, but just going off of what you said with your introduction, you're really hitting me with the one-liners. Like, forgiveness does not assume repair. I'm like, louder, like, can you just text me that like every day? I need to, maybe I could go through the exercise more if I had a post-it that just said that. But, I think, and I do see this with you, and I've had the same experience myself. When you go through the exercise of forgiveness, and again, you touched on this, I think people assume, okay, we're back to normal. She's over it, they're over it, we're moving on. How does that play into, often when you're going through this exercise of showing forgiveness to someone, I think a new boundary comes up, right? It's like, I'm forgiving this situation, but in order to move on, I need to do this, or I need to change something. Like, can you talk a little bit about that? Because I think oftentimes people will say, oh, I thought you forgave us. Or, I know we've said to each other, we just had a good conversation with friends about this. you know, I really thought I was healed from something. And then, you know, so what happened? I thought I was healed. I thought I had forgiveness. And now this is coming up. Like, you know, can you just touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, well, I mean, again, you kind of answered it by introducing this concept of really boundaries. Boundaries are what is going to help us in a relationship repair. And so, you know, that might look like so many different things, right? If it's with my partner, and you know, I use this example a lot because I think it's helpful, and then we don't have to get personal, but we can get personal too. I'm fine with that. But I think right, like you think about like a bank account or like a marble jar, right? Like uh, a wound or a rip essentially is like you grabbing marbles out of the relationship marble jar. Now, I think what's important to notice is that for every relationship, there's some kind of and we would call that trust, right? Trust is time plus a believable behavior. That is how we build trust. And so, right, like in a relationship, we have, you know, we have low, like, you know, right now, if I were to say, like, put a dollar amount on your, like, what's in your bank account? What's in your relational bank account? Just for fun, what would you say?
What's the limit?
Oh, good question. Spoken like somebody who knows too about finances. There's no limit. There's no limit.
Oh gosh.
$1 billion.
Beautiful.
Not enough. I can't spend $1 billion in a lifetime. That's generational wealth, honey.
Yeah.
I love it.
That seems
Okay.
good.
Okay, so let's play with $1 billion, you know, and then Tammy, you know, Tammy or Nat, you know, leaves the shoes on the floor. And who doesn't like the shoes on the floor? Raise your hand. Yes. Okay.
Whose shoes are on the floor?
Yeah.
Raise your hand.
So yeah. So that then there's, and again, this is a silly example, but like I would call that like a tiny rip, right? Tammy just withdrew $10 of $1 billion. That's not going to feel like anything. You're going to have a conversation. Now, forgiveness looks like for Nat going like, okay, you know, I'm going to work through the feelings that are coming up. For the sake of my own life and health and wellness, you know, I'm going to let this go. But part of letting go is now communicating, right? Is stepping into a bit of a boundary. Hey, babe, it's really important to me, right? So now I'm going to communicate my boundary. You know, in order for me to be in this relationship and for it to work, we got to find homes for our shoes. So there's the boundary. In order for me to function in a relationship, here's what I am going to do or I need. And then Tammy, it gets to meet the request. Like, okay, or you step into negotiation. And again, a lot of this is coupleship work, but really the boundary is what is going to protect access. Nat is not going to go, you know, hey babe, you are forgiven. Hallelujah. Throw your shoes around, like throw them around, right? Or, you know, the next day, you know, if you come in and your shoes are laying everywhere, Nat's not going to just walk away.
Right.
You know, she's likely that's going to have an effect on her. So when we think about how boundaries work, they're essentially there to help us sort of gently step into a repair. And what I mean by that is that access can change. So that was a silly example, but to turn it into like to turn it maybe more toward like a real example, it might look like, you know, I have a relationship with my dad, but we don't speak anymore because of my dad's issue with addiction. And because there have been so many ruptures in the relationship and so many attempts at a repair that has been one-sided, the evidence is showing me that, you know, my dad isn't able to meet or to honor the boundary that I've set. I'm like, where are my words? To honor my boundary that for me, I'm going to be in relationship with people that can be respectful, that don't yell, that show up when they say they're going to show up, that are consistent, that are reliable. And so if that doesn't happen, then that person does not get access to me in the same way.
Yeah.
And then this leads into a whole other conversation about relationships and our relationship houses and how everybody in our world has different access based on how responsible they are. You know, and how they show us that they can be responsible in relationship with us. And so all of that's happening kind of behind the scenes. But yes, when it comes to forgiveness, boundaries are really the way to slowly re-engage a relationship. So back to the bank account, if you and Tami or you and Nat have $1 billion and Tami withdrew 20 because of her shoes this week.
Damn.
She's funny. But then let's say Nat that like you, again, I'm making up these just for listeners. I'm making up these stories, but I'm going to pull something bigger. Let's say, and I don't even know if this is real life, but like you're supposed to fix the car and you don't fix the car. And for Tami, right, you said you were going to do something, you didn't do it. So that rip just pulled $100,000. That's going to feel different than the $10, right?
Right.
Weird, but their rips, right, and ruptures can feel different depending on the person. And so the repair there is going to look different. It's going to look different.
You know, it's so interesting, like thinking about this, because I think sometimes that, you know, people get together and then it's like 10 years later and now we're in a relationship panic because we don't understand what has happened. And it's almost like been death by 1,000 cuts, little cuts. And it's interesting because you know, I know that we're saying it's like, yes, those are small things, but that's actual real life. Yeah. Like what happens when our expectation is that the shoes get put away and the shoes don't get put away, and how that impacts us all the way through, you know, abandonment of families. It's like they're obviously all different levels of pain, but they require attention nonetheless, the smallest to the biggest.
Totally. You nailed it. And I would just emphasize, right? Like, attention, I might use the word acknowledgement. This is why, you know, when I work with relationships, I will say, it's really important that you learn to communicate about, of course, about the big things, but about the little things. The little things matter. Now, there's practice in learning how to communicate, right? That doesn't look like, you know, not every day you'd be like, Tami, the shoes, Tami, the shoes, Tami, the, right? Like,
then I'm taking $20 from you.
Yes. But there's a way for you to be able to go, hey, and again, this is where sometimes having a skilled professional is helpful because they can help you really get into the nitty gritty about why the shoes matter so much.
Yeah, exactly.
And there's a reason for it, right? The little things,
Right.
And honestly, again, I'm going to give you your flowers again, because in what you've already shared in these first couple episodes, you have really beautifully, I think, emphasized this. Like, when you talked about, what you were like, the clothes that you felt like you couldn't wear, right? Like being a kiddo and feeling like you didn't have freedom around the colors or the type of clothes, or right, that can seem like, okay, this is no big deal. And again, thanks to you sharing your beautiful, courageous story, that mattered 20, 35 years later.
Yeah.
It's like, most of us, if we float back to the moments that wounded us, it's not the knife in our arm. It's like the 1,000 tiny, it's the paper cuts. It's the
Yeah.
bonks and the stub toes and the over and over again that have created an
Right.
experience that ends up being really painful.
Yeah.
Sometimes I often say it bruises us internally, which is even scarier because then nobody can see it. Sometimes we can't even see it.
Yeah. That's so
So
true. What would you say? You use the example of a father earlier, who maybe struggled with addiction, just as an example, right?
Well,
And
that's my own story, but yes.
well, yes.
thank you for sharing
Yeah,
that too.
thank you. And in a scenario like that, let's say you have a parental figure, a brother, a sister, a cousin, someone you're close to, a best friend, and you love them literally more than anything. You love them so much, right? And forgiveness, you're going on this journey of forgiveness, right? And you're processing through that. The other individual in this scenario is not showing the signs that you were talking about for needing for repair, right? They're not there. They're not responding well to boundaries that you're putting up, and they're making it about them. When people are not healthy, they respond like they do not respond well to boundaries. I feel like it becomes this, why are you hurting me? Like type of situation. So in a scenario like that, where right now you're not really seeing that repair can take place because there's the trust that you need in order to repair is not there, or even kind of like building back. I know you talked a little bit earlier about the house, right? In the scenario, you and I have talked about this quite a lot of, like in my house, I'm in my bedroom. That's my most intimate place, right? In my scenario, Tami, my wife, is in my bedroom with me. And then, my closest dear friends might be in my living room or my kitchen or, somewhere like that. Then there might be somebody on my front porch. And then there might be someone on the very edge of where my yard starts. They're not on my yard. They're just at the edge. So there's different levels of boundaries in your life, right? And I have always really appreciated that analogy. My question is, though, what would you say to us that someone's listening on, like, you're disappointed because you don't see that repair is going to be able to take place? So, like, what are your options? Are they just out of your life? Are they on the edge of the yard? Like, what are the options in that scenario where they're far enough where they're not causing hurt and pain for you, but maybe you don't want to never see them again?
Yeah. I mean, again, this is like where this is the gift of boundaries, right? Boundaries allow me to be in relationship with you, but in a way that allows me to define how much access you get of me. I think where this gets tricky probably the most is with family or in our like partnered or most intimate relationships. Because the idea can be, again, that um, access is assumed. Access is not assumed. Ooh, that's going to probably piss a lot of people off that are listening to this.
Yeah.
Hated to
That's
hear it.
not,
Yeah.
because that's not, we did not grow up. I did not grow up with that idea
I
or
didn't
concept
either.
of reality.
Mm-mm.
And I think even, I think I just, really, until I really was forced to get my own help, did I realize like, oh, wait a minute. I am getting drug in all these relationships and, maybe there's another way. Like, wait, okay. I I can't control them, but I can control me. Like maybe I don't have to spend another day trying to save my dad who is in the throes of addiction, right? Or my partner or because what we know is that we just aren't that powerful.
Yeah.
We can't control the people. Other people's behavior is not about us either. It's about them. And so I think for me, there was some real learning. Again, this is where having like a skilled professional can be helpful. If you are somebody that's especially if you're somebody that's dealing with someone that is dealing with any kind of addiction, because it's so nuanced. But for me, or I would say if you are experiencing any kind of abuse, this is nuanced, because my relationship with my dad changed not because I didn't love him or truly that he didn't love me. It changed because it wasn't a safe relationship for me.
Yeah.
So so giving my dad full access to me, right? Or in the situation that we, when we talk about our relationship house, our bedroom is like our most vulnerable space, right? Like
Right.
where people get, they get to see all inside all your drawers and they get to know like what your bedside table looks like. And, and it requires great responsibility. The people that are in that space have to really show us that they can be safe in relationship. And,
Yeah.
and so then thank God, right, that I didn't, I knew that my dad was showing me by his behavior that, and because of the addiction, that he wasn't a safe person. And so I knew that he wasn't going to get that kind of access to me. But I still wanted to have some kind of a relationship with him.
Yeah.
So I had to learn what I like to call how to be on my front porch. And, if you think about a front porch, and again, I do want to just suggest that this is a very, this is an example that I would give of what my house would look like in the suburbs where I grew up. So anyone listening to this, you are going to have to design your own home. But I have a front porch, and on my front porch, it's on the outside of my house, the farthest place in my house from my bedroom. And it's big, and there's like rocking chairs, and there's like instruments, and there's games, kind of in a weird way. If you've ever been to a Cracker Barrel, picture like
that's what I was picturing.
Me too. I immediately thought
picture
that.
like, I don't know why it just is, but there's room, lots of people. But on the front porch, we are playing games together. We're listening to music. We're talking about the sunset. We're sipping our sweet tea. I'm on the front porch. I'm not talking about the depths of my soul. You're not looking at my bathroom cabinets on the front porch. We're not processing political arguments on the front porch. Front porch is really for the relationships where we're really just information sharing. The people on my front porch don't get access to the inside of me. but they still get access to me. And I think that's an extraordinary concept. We
It
can
is, yeah.
have different kinds of relationships. And
Yeah.
so for me, one, I had to accept that I have a person in my life that isn't able to show up in the way that I would want them to. There's a level of acceptance, acknowledgement, acceptance there. And then for me, I do some work internally, creating this this emotional boundary to really like sort of shift my dad to the front porch. And so I don't have the same requirements on my front porch relationships. Safety is one. Now you can't be harming people anywhere in any
Right.
relationships, but I don't have the same requirement for reliability and dependability on the front porch.
Yeah.
There are people, unfortunately, that we're in relationship with that aren't reliable. There are people that have harmed you even that don't care that they harmed you.
Yeah.
And we
Yeah.
may still
Wow.
be in relationship with those people. Now you do get that choice. And if you choose, for me, I chose to be in relationship with my dad, but in a way that was still safe for me. And that was that we communicated very rarely. But when we did, it was to shoot the shit.
Yeah.
How you doing? And the truth is, that's all he could do. I mean, ultimately, the alcoholism ended up affecting his brain, and so there was quite a severe cognitive decline.
Wow.
But the truth is, even that, we were able to talk, and to someone else, it might seem like so silly. Like, why are you even talking? I'm thinking about, I work with clients too that have caregivers and parents that are dealing with dementia, some kind of terminal illness or cognitive impairment like dementia. And as tragic as that is, there is still a way to have a relationship. It just requires a massive reframe in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
I did that with my dad. I'm like, I think the last couple of times that we talked, I mean, he knew who I was, but our conversation was so, just so surface level. And I think a lot of people might identify with that, like having people in their lives where you're kind of just shooting the shit. You're talking about the weather, what'd you do today? Who'd you see? This happens a lot too. I think sometimes I don't want to, in no way is this demeaning or dismissing special relationships, but like grandparents, it's like, oh man, I think if I would highlight anything, it's that boundaries are really there to help you with the relationships in your life. And all of our relationships can look different. Not everybody gets the same access. And when we're wounded, yes, I mean, I think maybe both of you were asking the question, but we want to really learn how to practice setting boundaries emotionally so that we can relate to people that are important to us without giving them access to harm us again.
Yeah.
Right. Well, it also really, I think, impacts I was thinking about this even for myself, like when I'm able to successfully have a boundary with someone that I need a boundary with, it also helps me manage my expectations and manage my disappointment. I definitely have a lot less disappointment when there's an appropriate boundary to the appropriate relationship. And obviously we're all still figuring that out of what that looks like and when it needs to be implemented and all of that. But, I feel like for me that it really does help, because if a relationship is just hurting again and again and again and again, which is honestly a lot, like for me, that's what a majority of my life looked like.
Yep.
And I've had to work really hard to like get out of that mindset that forgiveness doesn't look like the previous situation again on repeat in the future. It doesn't look like that. It looks like, for me, forgiveness has been instrumental because it's allowed me to create space for myself. It's allowed me to implement the boundaries that I need to in order to where I can be as big as I want to be, and I can like take up the space that I want to take up. And I think when I got to that point, which obviously you helped me with, that the forgiveness is not about, like you said earlier, like it's not about the other person. It is, and it's great. Ideally, right? If someone hurts you in a really good relationship, you repair and you work through it and you build back the trust, right? That's ideal for all of us. But in the situations where that's not an opportunity or not available, I think boundaries make a massive difference.
Yeah, for sure.
They do. And for me, they've allowed me to love myself a lot better. Because I got rid of a lot of the voices that were contrary to who I was and were contrary to my identity and were contrary to my confidence and all of that. You know, for my story, probably more on the, I wouldn't say extreme, but like I had to really work my way through that. But for a lot of us, I think it is, right? It's the parents, it's the brothers and sisters, it's all of these relationships that we're really entangled with, on a pretty intimate level. That can be difficult. For me, my family's not in my life. So for me to put a boundary up has been, and to forgive has been for me. If they were in my life, we'd be having a very different conversation, right? So I say that just to say for everyone listening that, this is probably a bit more difficult with people that are in our life, on our front porch, in our yard, right?
Banging down the door to come inside.
Right.
That's right.
You know?
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. Yeah. And I do want to say this, you know, I'm talking about my dad and I know you shared again so courageously about your family. And I want to do my best to say this as gently and tenderly and compassionately as I can, because this is my own story, but I also have witnessed and again journeyed with so many folks that have really what I would consider abuse and neglect as kids because of their caregivers. When it comes to parents, you know, I think the conversation is even more nuanced because as kids, it's not an equal relationship. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
There is a power differential there. And so, you know, hence why I use the word abuse and neglect. And again, it does not mean that I don't deeply love and care and have compassion for my own caregivers, but I also can acknowledge that I was neglected because of the disease of addiction, and that neglect has affected me, created tons of chaos, and all kinds of other things, you know, in my family of origin. And that's not okay. And so I want to be really clear that the conversation around what happens for us in our family of origins, or if there are parents listening out there, I know you guys have done a great job too. Tami, I chuckle because I feel like I hear you say, like, okay, I want to remember this, you know, as we step in and as we're parents. Oh, what a gift, right? And I think that's why most of us really like step into maybe our own like healing and, wellness, health journeys. Because we realize like, wait, these are patterns. This isn't, something's not working for me. Something feels off or it's not working. And I don't want to, that didn't feel great. I don't want to do that again. And again, I just think like, yeah, like it's because we experienced something that we should not have experienced. And so I just want to acknowledge that, and say that while that can happen, repair is a powerful it's the most powerful practice that we can learn. And I can't tell you, I mean, I have so many tremendous relationships today that, I mean, really have been healed and are flourishing because, yeah, I had people that I loved and also myself willing to learn how to step in, take accountability, apologize, and make an effort to change the way I'm showing up or behaving in the relationship, as a sign of repair. And that changes access, it changes safety that we have in relationships. And so I want us to hold both things, right? Like we can experience trauma as kids, abuse, neglect, and as adults, and also learn how to repair, learn how to, I mean, even in our families, it's extraordinary. Oh,
yeah.
I mean, I'm sharing more of my tragic story, but if I were to give you the whole picture, I'd have to tell you about the incredible healing that's come from learning really the practice. And it's so funny that we're talking about forgiveness, because really forgiveness is a part, I think, of, maybe forgiveness is the river and repair is the ocean or something, to think through.
I like that.
Yeah, it's a piece of it.
Yeah.
I love that. And thank you again for sharing your story. I think that's so relatable for so many people.
Yeah.
Myself included, and a lot of people we know. So I think it's just, it kind of helps to see that and how you work through those boundaries. And that is a tough pill to swallow, a boundary.
Yeah.
Really quite hard for me, but quite hard for a lot of people. But, it is worth it. And probably another piece of self-care, like you mentioned, just setting yourself up. I liked what you said, babe, about, your expectations. You're really just protecting yourself, by adapting and setting yourself up for success. So I love that.
Yeah, I do too. Wow. Thank you. Man, it's a tricky thing to figure out, and it takes a lot of work, and it takes a lot of courage and a lot of love. And I really like kind of where we ended, that even in people's lives where as children they experience abuse and neglect, forgiveness or repair in the future does not mean that is okay. Yeah. And it doesn't mean that we're saying it's okay. It just means that right now we're at a different place, and maybe the dynamics are different, and we get to choose how we do relationship with people. Yeah. And often how we do relationship with people says a lot about how much we love ourselves as well.
Totally. Yeah. So, I mean, really, it's an extension. That's why I love that we started with, I don't even know why we did, but that we started like it's important to sort of acknowledge, like, there is this like part of it that's really connected to this relationship. And then, of course, the external relationship, but yeah, it's exactly right.
Yeah.
And again, I mean, I'm sure if you ask me this question 10 years from now, it's funny, right? It's like, wonder how we would answer. I mean, I am still also figuring this out, right? Like
Yeah.
with, I'm in relationships where I am fucking up and, having to have people that I love and adore say, hey, you just withdrew the entire bank account.
Yeah.
So what are we going to do?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a hard conversation to stay in.
It is. Yeah.
And it's possible. I think that's, man, and it's worth it. It's worth it when we have established, I think for ourselves, this is where I think knowing yourself is so important, but, what constitutes a safe, healthy relationship, right? What are expectations? Those are the things that help us really designate or define the rooms in our house.
So true.
And so, I think, it's definitely possible. And it's powerful too. Like, oh man, some of my most treasured, which this makes sense, right? You think about the moments in life that you treasure the most, even within yourself or your own story. It's like, it's never the moment. It's not like my graduate. It's not these moments of like great accolade. It's like, I know that it took me a year and a half to, bench press 240 pounds. And I finally got there, nobody else saw like every morning when I'm like dragging my tushy but like, I know what it took to get, no one else even knew that day that it's like the things we value often are the things that cost us the most. And I think, with repair, man, it's hard. It's hard to hear that. It's hard to hear like, hey, there's just been enough shoes now that this is it. The bank account's right. Like, and then I'm using a silly example, but there is that, right? I mean, it can be different reasons for different relationships, but being able to go like, okay. And how do we move? Are you willing to move forward?
Mm-hmm.
Can you hear me? Take account, take responsibility, apologize. Make a plan for how this isn't going to happen, right? Start to really bank, weird, I'm using that word, right? Time and believable behavior. And now I'm depositing back into that bank account, right?
Mm-hmm.
Trust, rebuilding trust.
Right.
So for people out there that are like, maybe not sure if repair is real. It is real. It's real. It does take two people who are willing, but it's real.
Well, I feel inspired personally.
Yeah. I feel like I always feel inspired after talking to you.
Yeah.
So I'm happy that other people get to experience this. And that you get to experience
I know. I'm so glad to have had the opportunity.
And, and I feel like this is just like a normal conversation for us, a swim in the deep, always have, always will.
Mm-hmm. I love it.
And I appreciate you being here. I appreciate you sharing.
Yeah.
I appreciate your support.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Support.
Worse.
No.
Yeah. I feel like you carry a lot of this just within yourself as well. So.
Well, thanks to you.
I love that you're doing this. I mean, I love that you're doing it together even more. What a gift to the world.